So on the far right question, I think I don't think I need 5 minutes actually to talk about that. I think there's a couple of very simple and obvious observations I want to make on that. I think the main one is that the far right have managed to capitalize on this issue because for a long time mainstream politicians have simply refused to actually address the issues, and that's opened up a political space for far right movements, social networks, informal social networks, to take advantage of that situation and provide a narrative. Whether the narrative is accurate or not, the fact is they're providing a narrative. So when people are looking for an answer, if someone gives you an answer, you know, the chances are you're going to capture an audience, regardless of how inaccurate that answer may be. In terms of what's actually being done, I think with far-right groups, they evolve as organizations, they adapt to their environment in order to stay alive, just like all organizations do. And I think they are living in an environment right now where they feel that a very specific focus on Muslim extremism is a very good vehicle for them to drive through their traditional racist agenda. So I think it's more a case of exploiting the fears, the prejudices, the kind of the unknown, if you like, and using that to drive through a racist agenda. Generally, they conflate a lot of issues. They conflate immigration and community tensions and conservatism and Islamism and jihadism. They conflate all these issues and turn it into one big kind of blob, if you like, that there's a threat. There's these people out there who want to take over eventually, and they're planning to all take over, and it's growing, and we must do something about it. And there's no real desire to actually break that down and look at all the different sub-elements within there and find and address them in that kind of systematic way, which is what needs to be done. But I have met one or two individuals who genuinely believe that the West is on the verge of being taken over and overrun by Muslims, and within the next 20 years it will become a huge Islamic state. And they actually genuinely believe that without being racist, and I think that's quite worrying actually that they believe that. I think the other big story as well, I think over the past few years, is the fact that a lot of these networks are actually very informal, and they've been driven by social media, by Facebook, Twitter, and other kind of technologies that have allowed mass mobilization to take place for a very short space of time, which is in a way fantastic. That's exactly what's happening in Egypt right now, where social media is being used to galvanize thousands of people onto the streets to protest against dictatorships, and exactly the same thing happened in Tunisia. But it's also very dangerous because rumors and misinformation can also spread very quickly, and thousands of people can be on the streets demonstrating against something which didn't even happen, which happened in Birmingham a few years ago, where a rumor quickly spread that 12 Muslim men had raped a young Jamaican girl, and there were demonstrations and people were killed, and the rumor turned out to be false. So I think that also drives organizations like the EDL and others who are driven by, in some cases, a racist agenda, in some cases just people who don't really understand the issues at all, but they feel something's not quite right. I think the other thing that really provides oxygen or motivation for these organizations is the fact that communities have changed so dramatically and very quickly in a very short space of time. I think immigration wasn't controlled under New Labour. We had, and the community just changed shape. 1 minute you walk down the street and suddenly you don't recognise anyone anymore. And that was very disconcerting for lots of people in towns and villages around England who took the community very seriously. And I think that in itself provoked a reaction where it was like, okay, we're not racist, and it's difficult to say this without being cast as racist, but something's not quite right. We don't like what's happened. It's not that we don't like immigrants, we just don't like the fact that our community changed so quickly and we don't know what to do about it. But at the same time, we can't talk about it. We can't, and I think that's what's really created a lot of anger. People feel they can't talk about issues which they want to talk about. So I think what's really needed is sensible voices to come in and actually provide some clear thought leadership and discuss these issues, and therefore depriving the far right of oxygen. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think I'll move straight to the point that was just raised by the last individual, who's unfortunately a volunteer for the Stop the War Coalition. Hopefully after tonight you might change your mind. I think in order to understand what's actually going on there, you need to understand strategically and tactically what both sides are trying to achieve. And I think a good way to understand that is a document actually that was discovered, or not discovered, but popularized by a Swiss individual called Sylvain Besson. I think that's the correct French pronunciation. Okay, and it was picked up in a raid, actually, in a house in Switzerland of Ikhwan activist called Yusuf Nada. Now, this document, its authenticity has been debated, but when you read it, it kind of makes sense based on what I've seen and experienced. And on this document, they have a 25-point plan of taking over the world. It's a very kind of Austin Power-esque plan, almost. I just want to quickly mention a few of those points on the plan. I won't go through all of them. Point number 1, networking and coordinating actions between like-minded Islamist organizations. Number 2, avoiding open alliances with known terrorist organizations and individuals to maintain the appearance of moderation. Point 3, infiltrating and taking over existing Muslim organizations in order to realign them towards the Muslim Brotherhood's collective goals. So there's various points like that, and there's 2 I think that are really interesting. Firstly, point number 8, cultivating an Islamist intellectual community, including the establishment of think tanks and advocacy groups, and publishing academic studies to legitimize the Islamist positions and chronicle the history of Islamist movements. That's point number 8. And point number 16 is even more interesting, instituting alliances with Western progressive organizations who share similar goals. So there you can see it's actually very clearly part of their strategy to actually make alliances with organizations who they think can further their own objectives of establishing a political entity that represents their interpretation of Islam. And they've managed to do that very successfully in Europe. And I think at this point it's worth saying this is nothing new. Hassan al-Banna and Ikhwan al-Muslimin were happy to... what are you doing, Raj? Sorry. Hassan al-Banna and Ikhwan al-Muslimin were happy to build an alliance with...
17 minutes. We've got 17 minutes. We've got to get through this.
Okay, thank you.
The gentleman in front is simply trying
to portray that.
Take over the chairmanship, which is a very sensible aspiration, I think, at this juncture.
Okay. Yes, where was I?
Ghaffar, if you would conclude.
Yeah, I'm just coming to the final point now. Sorry, just completely knocked me off. Okay, so I just want to say the Ikhwan traditionally was happy to build alliances with the Third Reich. In fact, they translated Mein Kampf into Arabic and called it My Jihad and distributed it across Egypt in the 1930s. So it's nothing new. But I think as far as the far left is concerned, they see this as an opportunity for themselves. They're playing their own game here. They view the Muslim masses as potential recruits for their own movements. Hence, they're happy to go along with many pro-Islamist stances, which they think will translate into votes for their parties, funds for their organization of activists, which itself requires an application of moral or cultural activity, and what Tariq Fatah calls the racism of lower expectation. I'll stop there.